Do you have any study tips for first year medical students? Absolutely I do. So I think the key thing about studying in the first year of medical school is you need to remember that it would be impossible to know everything. There is so much content that they expect you to be able to answer questions on in the first year of medical school that it's just not realistic to think that you would be able to answer every single question in an exam. The really important thing about your studying, if, like King's, you have a multiple choice exam, is that you need to have studied everything at least once, because that way you can make informed guesses. And honestly, that's the key to doing well in medical school in multiple choice exams, is being able to exclude answers. Not necessarily knowing the answer, it would be impossible to know the correct answer having read just the stem of a question for the 100, 150 questions you have. What you're aiming for is you're aiming to be able to rule out 2, 3 of those options in every single question. Obviously there'll be lots of questions if you studied properly where you'll be able to just know the answer from reading the stem, but the majority of the time, in reality, you're going to be just excluding answers and then guessing. You only need to answer enough questions correctly to pass the exam. First year for most people doesn't count at all towards your final grade, so you really don't need to worry about being in the top 25 or 15%. What I really found useful was having a look at all of the topics that I was expected to know in the year, thinking, okay, which of these am I good at? Which of these am I crap at? Which of these do I enjoy studying? And which of these am I going to sit down to study and within 5 minutes realise that I'm sitting on my phone and not actually reading my textbook or watching slides? You then need to double down on the things you enjoy and that you're good at, then you just kind of need to pay lip service to the rest. Obviously there's not really anything that you could say, oh, I don't need to know this, because all of the science that's in a medical curriculum is there for a reason. But I'm going to take a classic example here, the Krebs cycle. In my first year I learned the Krebs cycle well enough that I could probably answer 3 out of every 5 questions that might come up on the Krebs cycle, but that's enough. That's all you need to know, really. Almost no doctor needs to be an expert in the Krebs cycle, and it's the same for a lot of the first year stuff. There are some things I wouldn't include in that. There are some things I think you just need to know. For me, the main one there would be anatomy, because that doesn't change, and once you know the anatomy, then a lot of other stuff starts to make sense. At most medical schools, your first year exams cover topics in anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, cell biology, microbiology, and pathology. You need to choose which of those you're really going to focus on, and the ones that I found interesting, the ones I enjoyed learning and then therefore was good at, was anatomy and physiology. And I think I liked these ones the most because once you know where things should be and how things should be working, then it becomes quite easy to work out when things are in the wrong place or something's gone anatomically wrong, or when something is misbehaving, an organ isn't working like it should. So when there's something pathological happening in an organ and it's not behaving like it should physiologically. There are tons of ways of revising for a medical school exam, and the way that I've revised has changed, especially changed a lot since first year. I think that the best way to revise for the type of exam that you get in first year is flashcards. That's definitely kind of where I've landed and where I will plant my flag, is flashcards. I've never actually used Anki. I never used pre-made flashcards. I found that the act of making them was just as good for me as the act of reading them. I ended up using a much less well-known app called Chegg. I really wouldn't recommend Chegg. The main thing that I want to be able to do with my flashcards now is to export them and have them as some kind of PDF. You cannot do that with Chegg. So if you are starting to write flashcards, find some kind of app, some kind of web service where you can make your flashcards and then print them, because I really wish I could do that now. At King's, we have our exams in kind of stages. So second and third year, the exam that really counts for that stage, which is the second stage of medical school, is at the end of third year. And for that exam, I think I made well over 2,000 flashcards just for that exam. Obviously you need much less for first year, it's just 1 year. I would really recommend starting to make flashcards now. The reason I love flashcards is that you can use them anywhere, especially if you have them in some kind of app that you can use on your phone, and you can spend any amount of time. So unlike past questions or writing up notes, you can just have 3-4 minutes and you can go through maybe a couple of flashcards. The other things that I found really useful in first year were mind maps, and I found this incredibly useful, especially for pharmacology. I'm dyslexic and I really struggled with some of the names of drugs, especially in first year, trying to memorize the different names of antibiotics and then remembering where in the bacterial cell cycle they acted and how that killed the bacteria. I found that really hard. So I found that by making mind maps and kind of remaking them, so making them with connections, the class of antibiotic to where it acts and how that kills bacteria, and then making it again with something to do with the name of the antibiotic and how it acts, and just kind of trying to make those connections with the mind maps, I found that really useful in first year.